Hey guys, I want to talk to you about this knife. And I say talk about because this isn't really going to be a review. I haven't used this knife. It's on loan from a friend because I was interested in examining it firsthand. So I'm not really going to get into detailed specs or comparisons or value for money or anything. Basically, I think this knife is interesting from a design perspective, and I'm going to talk about some of the things I thought about when I was checking it out. This is the Benchmade Mini-Dejavoo, designed by Bob Lum, who unfortunately passed away at the end of 2007. He was 64. He's definitely a skilled and interesting designer. If I'm understanding his website correctly, he claims to be the man behind the American Tanto, which is a blade design the knife community has a serious love-hate relationship with. Anybody who can spawn that many threads on blade forums just sort of incidentally is probably worthy of discussion just for that alone. Though, as you see, this particular knife is, I guess you'd call it a drop point, though it looks almost like it wants to be a leaf-shaped blade. So, right away within the first few minutes, there are a few things that sort of puzzled me about this knife. And these are actually sort of complaints, though they're very subjective relative to the subjective. They're about the way I like knives, mostly. One, it is a right-hand side only, tip-down only clip. Which, some knives are like that, it ain't always bad. But, it brings me to one of my first points of confusion. What's this? There's one on the other side, too. Now, my confusion on this directly relates to it being a tip-down only clip, because I don't have a real Onslaught, but I have the Ganzo clone. This is based on a knife also designed by Bob Lum, and it has this sort of signature divot near the back of the handle here. And after thinking about it for a while on this knife, I decided that it was probably some sort of thumb rest. I wasn't sure how functional it was, but that seemed to be the way it was made. Because when you reach into your pocket to extract this knife, which is tip up, that's pretty much where your thumb ends up. You probably use a grip, something like this. But that's clearly not the case here, because you're never drawing the knife out of your pocket like this. How and why would you do that? It's tipped down. You're drawing it out of your pocket something like this. So, I would love to know. Please comment below if you understand what these little divots are for. One thing I will note is that they do change the profile of the knife when viewed in this dimension. Hopefully that's going to be visible, but you'll see that the knife is at its thinnest right up near where the blade starts, and it swells out a little bit till it gets to about here, and then that's where the divot starts, so it functionally thins the handle near the back. Is that the purpose? I don't know. While we're at it, we can look at the back spacer, which interestingly is not just ground flush with everything, it's rounded. The finish work here is quite nice. There's no rough transitions anywhere. Although the only point on the knife where the finish isn't really good is down here where they didn't quite get the grind lines off of this curve on one of the liners. Now, the other thing I don't like about this knife is that it seems like Mr. Lum either was unaware of or really didn't care about people who open a knife with a middle finger flick. It's not impossible on this knife, but it's pretty hard because on this side he basically buried the thumb hole. And if I recall correctly, he did this on the Spyderco Lum Chinese folder too. I don't like that. It was never a conscious decision on my part, but I open almost all my knives with the middle finger. Sorry if I just flipped you the bird there. It just feels faster and more secure to me. So I'm not really sure why a designer would do that. It just seems like a bad idea. But maybe not a bad idea for people who never use that, I guess. Another interesting thing about this knife to me is just the overall aesthetics. And how can I explain this? This knife looks like it has an overbite to me. Sorry if I just ruined it for you if you love it, but it kind of has... From some angles, this knife is really, really gorgeous. But just looking at it in profile to me, it looks kind of like it's making a durr face. Again, sorry if I just ruined a beautiful knife for you. The reason I bring that up is because it's kind of an optical illusion. It looks like the blade is seriously offset up like this, and it really isn't. If we take a straight edge and compare, we have pretty much a straight line between the major part of the straight part of the handle and the straight part of the blade before the curve of the belly starts. The reason this knife looks like it's offset is actually because of the way the spine is curved and the way the thumb ramp is set up. Because, zoom in a little more, hopefully that'll be visible. You have that thumb ramp there, so at this point the spine is actually well above the line of the handle, and because of the very gentle curve down, it actually stays that way for a while. This is in contrast to the way many knife designers handle thumb ramps, like here's a ZT350, and it kind of has a thumb ramp at the end of the handle, right where it joins the blade, but then immediately afterward the blade slopes down sharply to about there and then becomes a pretty normal drop point. This design said, nope, we're not doing that. Just a steady curve all the way. One thing I love about this visually is, well, design and execution wise. Let's zoom in and show you this. This swedge here is really cool. Nope, too far. Trying to zoom in as close as I can without totally losing focus. Okay. Up here, see if we can get the light to grab it. The swedge is fairly wide. It gets progressively narrower as it approaches the tip, until finally it just fades away to nothing right about here. One of the interesting things about this is if you look at the spine of the knife, see, thick, swedge starts, uniform spine thickness, you know, at its narrowest where the swedge is, all the way out to the end. I feel like that took a certain precision of grinding that's a little bit uncommon. And it's certainly very beautiful. Another thing I like about this knife's design is it's quite smooth, but it's also very secure. Some knife designers, I think, go a little overboard. Zero Tolerance is kind of guilty of this, as are a lot of tactical knives. Actually, the 350 isn't that bad, but you know, they cover their handles in stuff like this, which sometimes helps, but often doesn't help as much as people think it does. Having the overall handle shaped properly seems much more secure to me than covering it with rough stuff. That seems like kind of a crude way to make up for having an improperly designed handle. And this knife, I think, has a very nicely designed handle. It's quite straight, which is actually generally a good thing for comfort and general use. But as mentioned, there's a thumb ramp and there's a matching projection at the bottom for your finger. So there's actually quite a bit of resistance to sliding forward if you have a proper grip on this knife. And likewise, at the tail, that adds a lot of security. And I should have mentioned this before is there a word for that? This swell at the, on a sword, it would be the pommel. Anyway, this sort of hump spine, and not spine, well, spine of the handle, also sort of nestles into your palm, and so if you were to do a sort of thrusting motion, that's also some resistance to going forward, because it just tucks itself in there deeper. So in many ways this is very practically designed, and I think it would cut very well. I think aesthetically it would be a little prettier if it was a fully Lee-shaped blade, but practically speaking, fairly short knives with mostly straight blades cut very well to me in utility applications. So 6 of one, half dozen of another. This knife is insanely smooth, by the way. Trying to look down inside, I see what appear to be the same black-looking synthetic washers I saw on the Benchmade AFCK I reviewed a little while ago. I think, I've forgotten the trade name, but I think these might be a type of nylon washer that's impregnated with molybdenum disulfide, which is a lubricant which is absolutely amazing for steel. Which may account for the fact that I can barely feel anything sliding on anything as this knife opens and closes. It just glides open. A little bit of force and, you know, there's nothing behind that thumb flick at all. It just, no resistance. Although even on this side with the cutout, that is tucked down there a little bit. Maybe I'm just spoiled by some of the big Spyderco models that have the larger holes that are set farther out from the handle. It's really hard to miss the opening hole on a paramilitary or a Manix 2 or something. But this does make a much slimmer package. Well, I think I've probably about talked myself out on this. Mentioned some things I like, some things I don't like, and some very interesting, to me anyway, design considerations and subtle details. Overall, I think this is a very good knife. If you can basically, you know, to get back into review for a second, I think this is a very good knife if basically 2 or 3 little things about it don't bother you, like the partially eclipsed opening hole or the one pocket clip location. And I'm really sad we've lost Bob Lum, because he put out some very interesting stuff. Alright guys, this has been a look at and a chat about the Benchmade Mini-Dejavoo. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Gentleman signing off saying, remember where your knife is.